I mean, how do I describe it? It's
Bold.
A light.
Black.
unapologetically black.
Very funny, amusing.
Caring.
You give great advice from a different perspective. Passionate,
Free.
Vulnerable.
A creative.
sexy.
My girl is lit as fuck.
Always ready to spark a little something.
Genuine, very genuine.
Resilient.
Like sixth sense, otherworldly. If you know, you know.
It's so vibrant, baby. Hello, everyone, and welcome to So Vibrant, the place where music, history, and culture collide. I am your cultural storyteller and award-winning host, Lady AC. So we have officially made it to the month of July, y'all. Yes, that means we are halfway through 2025, officially in the summer solstice, or what commonly known as summertime. And what comes to your mind when you hear the word summer? Like what experiences, memories, just general thoughts as you hear the word summer. And the reason I ask is because, especially in these times that we are living in, that we are experiencing, child, after the results of that trial, to what we're witnessing with these genocides going on around the world, all the way to the devastating legislation that they just passed, is already showing destructive effects, not only with healthcare, our way of living, but even environmentally with what we're seeing unfold in Texas. I think it is imperative that we learn to recall back on memories that keep our will to still find hope and to still find joy and to still believe that things are possible for change to happen, that we can create the change that we want to see and live in. And what better time of our lives did that kind of energy exist but during the summer? I mean, just simply going even innocently when we look at our childhoods, the summertime represented so much. Of course, we were out of school, so we didn't have no homework, we didn't have no tests. We didn't have to worry about seeing the teachers we didn't want to deal with or the students we didn't want to deal with. We could spend more time with our friends in the neighborhood or our favorite cousins or go see relatives. If you were fortunate enough, some people went on vacations, or you got to go to the mall, or you got to go to the skating rink or swimming, or just, or maybe just honestly lay around the house, play video games, watch TV, or maybe even sleep in a little bit. But in those times, anything felt possible. Everything felt like we had the power to just truly just be in that life in that moment. And in the spirit of that, I know I've definitely been doing that a lot since the summertime happened. And when I recall back on my memories, I remember, like, yes, I did do the family vacations. I know I definitely went swimming a lot and spent a lot of time with my cousins and especially in my grandparents' house. But I also remember a part of me didn't really like summer either. All because I knew that I would have to participate in summer school. And I know when you hear that, you think about, summer school where, you didn't quite meet the grades or you missed that test that could have helped you go to the next grade and all that. So you had to go to school during that time to make up and so you can get those credits or knowledge or whatever to go to the next grade. But no, I made the grades. I had A's and B's. I was on the honor roll. But my mom made it a point to make me prepare for the grade I was going to. And juxtaposing those memories of that compared to what we're seeing with this rise of misinformation, disinformation, anti-intellectualism, people lacking the literacy to not fall for propaganda, to not fall for the rhetoric and the heavily biased information that we're starting to see now, the heavily depending on AI generated sources to basically create thoughts at this point. It really made me appreciate that initiative that she took, that I now use now to navigate what we're seeing. That influenced what today's episode is going to be about. Because when we look at the conversation of anti-intellectualism, of media literacy, of people not being able to, do the basic skills of reading, writing, or low performance on that end, that didn't just happen overnight. The major question a lot of people are asking, is like, how do we get to this point? Why can't people can't read, can't write, and they go through school and they do all this? So how do we get? The point is that there were some steps that we as a society didn't hold each other accountable on to address. And that's what today's episode is going to be about. The things within this conversation that we can control, that we can do more to solve. But before we get into that, I'm going to give you this good music. And with it being the month of July, the summertime, I'm going to take this month to play some of my favorite summer songs. Because what I've learned as well is people receive information better when you welcome them into it. When you create an energy for them to receive it and actually be heard and hear you. In the spirit of that, we're going to take our first musical break and then we'll dive right on into this conversation.
Welcome to the island. We don't have umbrellas out here. Better get yourself a palm tree. 85 and sunny, cloud in the sky. Some kind of breezy, not a cloud in the sky. Palms in the wind, sand in my eyes. We rubbing Tahitian vanilla lotion on my thighs. Don't forget the sunscreen, you need that. Don't forget the camera, you need that. Baby, take a picture, look at that away. About to get it poppin', click, click, bang, bang. Electric yellow rays are oh so lovely. And it's cool. Forever in our minds we'll have this memory. Don't you, don't you, don't you, don't you, don't you, don't you, don't. You feel that you wanna fall in love. Just me, you, so it's mine. Hey, the most of this time, celebrate this moment. Big proud muggy, night is the shade. Full moon tonight, time to hit the straights. Jack and Jay-Z, and we switching 4 lanes. In the car screaming out the money ain't a thing. And baby, no it ain't, cause we young and reckless. You don't wanna test us, don't wanna test us. Be popping trunks and things, in the streets like click, click, bang, bang. Stars came out tonight just for you and me. And it's cool. Forever in our minds we'll have this memory. Don't you, don't you, don't you, don't, don't you, don't you, don't you, don't. You feel that you wanna
And that was Teresa JENEE with Tahitian Vanilla. And that is definitely one of my top favorite summer songs. Like, as soon as I hear that song, I know that's how I kick off my summer. So I love that vibe, love that energy. And one of my, like I said, just perfect setup for summertime. Speaking of summer, in recalling my own connections and memories regarding the season and my own journey with intellect, kind of led to today's conversation of us learning how to take accountability and actively taking accountability in the role we play with the issue of anti-intellectualism. Because as I stated before the musical break, we didn't just get here overnight. Like, this didn't just happen. And while I do want to make very clear in the beginning, I am very aware that there is a larger system at play when it comes to anti-intellectualism and that whole conversation, because when we're looking at oppressive systems such as white supremacy and colonialism and patriarchy and capitalism, they have created a system that impacts every way we think, move, operate, live. Honestly, what we're seeing at this point. And to tackle that system is going to take a very big collective effort and time, because this system, it took its time to make it. I mean, what, America is 250 something years old, and that's how long they've been doing this and implementing this system. So it's going to take time to do that. But today's conversation is highlighting the things we can do right now, the things we can control within our own grasp right now. Because as I stated, there is accountability that we have to take in this. Because I'm seeing a lot of people kind of use this conversation of anti intellectualism to pretty much call people dumb, to judge people's intelligence, to create even more discourse and disconnection amongst each other, to be heard, to be right, to be the leader or the right person to lead the conversation, and all these different things that are just very counterproductive and don't really lead us anywhere of solving this issue of anti-intellectualism, period, or even attacking the issue. So that's what I want to use today's episode, is to actually have that conversation of accountability. I think it's first important to actually define what intellect, what that is, because once again, while it is interchangeable or can be blurred between the lines of education and intelligence, they're not necessarily the same thing. They blend very well together. They're displayed beautifully together, and they can be very effective when you analyze the way we as people interact, learn, retain information, spread information, grow mentally, emotionally, or in just in our personal development. Yes, it's important, but I think it's important to differentiate what it is. So, by definition, intellect refers to the capacity of the human mind to reason, understand, and think abstractly. So, basically, to break that down, just the way we personally come to our own understanding, how we problem solve, how we make judgments. That is what intellect is. A study that was done on childhood development that I learned when I was in school. I wish I remember the name of the study right now, but if I can find it, I'll post it. But there was a study basically saying, and it was used to justify the importance of early childhood education. Like, the earlier you start to educate or interact with a child, the better. And basically, where they were saying that the mental intellect of a child is developed at the age of 6. So basically, meaning that the way all you, everybody under the sound of my voice, the way that you think, the way that you move, the way that you process, the way that you reason and create judgments, you already had that ability at the age of 6 years old, is what this study basically said. Now, of course, as we grow and develop and have experiences, the way that is enacted or that we show it or that we even develop it does change. But the core of it was literally at 6. And like I said, that's used to understand why it's so important that, especially for my people with children now or who have kids, that the earlier you can interact with them, you can talk with them, you can play with them, you can engage with them, is so crucial. So when it also comes to intelligence, intelligence pretty much is the broader range of our abilities. So based on the capacity created by our intellect, our intelligence is our ways of learning and applying and adapting the different things that we interact with. So as we grow, what we're learning from the books we read, from the people we talk to, from the experiences of just meeting and engaging with different environments and subjects. So when you think have that conversation about anti-intellectualism of that, what is the lack that we're cutting off people's ability to be able to reason, to be able to grasp certain realities, certain judgments, certain ways to problem solve or help themselves? And that is where leads me into the accountability, because I think as a result of experiencing these oppressive systems and just ultimately, on one end, we are just trying to survive them. So a lot of people are actively moving, living in survival mode. So they're not taking the time to really cater to a person's intellect or even their own, let alone their own intellect and reasoning. They're just trying to get by. They're just trying to get to that next day. They're just trying to get to that next bill. They're just trying to get to that next check. They're just trying to get to that next step. And so, in that wheel, pretty much, or that cycle of doing that, you can unfortunately create a generation of people who do not see the importance of developing it any further, because at the end of the day they're just trying to get by. And even in the relation of looking at it through engaging with education and expanding or utilizing intelligence, that bleeds into it, because now you see not this important, well, there is a conversation of importance of education, but there's no application of it. Basically, meaning that we tell kids, it's important to get their education, go to school, go in there, do your lesson, don't get in no trouble, do all that stuff. But then the only person hammering it down, the only person laying out that importance, that foundation, is the educators themselves. Because we have created a system where even the educators and the administrators and everyone involved in the education system are being burnt out, as we were seeing, especially last year and the year before, with the teacher burnout and a lot of people leaving the profession and getting overworked and overwhelmed, because now they find themselves not only teaching but now raising generations of people. I say people because this isn't just the students. Like I told people, when I was at one point in my life, I thought I wanted to be an educator. So when I was going through that track, I used to tell people a lot. I'm like, the easiest part of the job is the children. They're the easy part. What's difficult is dealing with the adults who you have to manage and communicate with and really ring them into this situation to be involved. Because one of the parts of the anti-intellectualism conversation that people have is like, the kids can't read, they can't do math, they can't do these things. But what any well-seasoned, or even just, someone like me who just dove into education can tell you, neither can the adults. The adults that you try to explain this to, they can't do that either. And one of my biggest issues that I was seeing not being talked about and still not kind of being talked about is how we are expecting children to behave in ways that we don't even hold adults to the same standard. But you expect these children to be able to do these functions, and the people around them can't. Having that both happen at the same time creates an issue of chaos, confusion, growing frustration, growing burnout, and all that is under this blanket of anti-intellectualism, where people basically start taking their intellect and blurring that line between that and intelligence and the use or lack of or vast amounts of education, creating their own understanding and thinking they can stand toe to toe with people who do this work for a living. The truth is, you can't argue facts. They are well researched, they are backed, they can be explained fully. Whereas when it comes to opinions and understanding, those things can change, can be wrong, can grow, can multiply. Whereas facts stay consistently true no matter what happens. Back on my Juneteenth episode, I talked about how I did this project on Afrocentricity versus Eurocentricity. And I recalled on that, to talk about Afrocentricity in relation to Juneteenth, but the Eurocentric part I feel is valuable for today's conversation. Because in it, you learn about how Eurocentricity really utilizes these systems of oppression that I talked about earlier and bleeds this one common mode method view under the Eurocentric approach. White men, white rich men, all right, and how they do business, how they communicate, how they show up in the world, how they establish themselves, how they educate themselves, and it bleeds through every multifaceted of our life, including our intellect. Under this system, there's only one kind of intellect. When the truth is, there are different types of intellect that people have. One of the most common things is the concept of common sense. You know how we talk about, hey, not everybody have it. Common sense ain't that common. We make up like that. The whole point of common sense, of reading the room, your environment, where you are, and learning how to navigate and operate in that, and just how to conduct yourself and show up in certain spaces, certain times, certain places, or even within yourself. That's an intellect. Another way of intellect, or a way of intellect, is through the different types and ways people retain information. For one, there are people who can listen. All they have to do is hear it, and they can do it. They can see it, they can smell it, they can taste it, they can paint it, they can write it. That's it. There are some people who have to be hands on. They have to feel it. They have to touch it. They have to get their hands dirty in some cases. And that's where you start to see that kind of grow and develop in intelligence of people who do like the blue collar work. So a lot of the trades, a lot of certifications, people who do that, that's the kind of intellect those people kind of have who do jobs like that. Another intellect is the visual learner, or visually seeing. Basically, you know how they say seeing is believing. Like everything literally they eyes see, they visualize, even mentally or emotionally or even within themselves. They can create, they can do, they can make. And then there are people who blend all different types of these intellects. Under this Eurocentric view, all that, it gets canceled out. All that gets ignored. And so you're judging a whole group of people under one method, which is the rich white male. And if the rich white male cannot grow, learn, control in that way, it's considered less than. It's written off. So imagine how many people abilities of understanding are constantly ignored, are told that they don't matter. And that leads back to that interchangeableness of intelligence, because what Eurocentricity does is that they conflate that. And basically by saying because you don't have this intellect, that means you're not smart enough. That means you're not good enough. You're not qualified enough. You don't fit the standard that we're setting. The first thing that happens is you have people who get discouraged, who get beat up basically by the system, who believe over time because they're berated with that message so much that they can't do more than that they get stuck and they operate the best way they know how, which is once again that survival, and that's where they stay. And another level is what I like to call the resentment stage. It's people who built up this animosity, this hatred, this jealousy of some sorts of people who are considered smart, who are considered valued for their intellect. And because they can never reach that, or so they believe they can never reach that, they resent the people who do. So any time they can find a way to degrade, to downplay, to chastise, to dismiss, to discourage, they will. Because this bleeds over into this elitism, especially we see this in education, where people think people who get education, who get these higher degrees, think so highly of themselves and get to, in some cases, they get put on the pedestal. Or where people get the type of education, so now they feel they're above, that creates this issue of unrelatability on many different levels. The first way of unrelatability is in these intellectual spaces, in these academic spaces, who really don't know how to talk to people. Like they really, there are some people who do basically use their degrees as their personality, who use their expertise as a way to tell people how they should be and how they are and how they need to go and how they should do this. Who wants to learn from somebody like that? Who wants to listen to somebody like that? Where every time you engage with them, they're so quick to tell you you're wrong. They're so quick to tell you, no, that's not what it is. And they quote all these facts and all these theorists and all these different texts that average people don't know. You think somebody gonna receive that information, gonna receive that message, gonna take you seriously? No. And then there's also within that elitism of people feeling that they have to put people through this ringer because they went through it. For instance, there are a lot of people who had to struggle to get to the positions, to get to the degrees, get to the levels that they are, which justifiably is understandable about how you wanting to get paid your work. You wanting to get acknowledged for the work you put in. Completely agree, as you should. However, that is not your excuse to use that to make that inaccessible for someone else. Because I think also in these intellectual, educational, academic spaces, because we don't accept the different types of intellect from people, that when certain people approach certain spaces, we make them work for it. We make them pay their dues. You know what I mean? We make them, you know, act like the intern, or they getting people coffee, getting your dry clean, getting this stuff, doing that to work up to it because you remember how you had to do that and how humiliating you had to be and how bullied you had to go through it and all those different kind of things. And I'm like, the point of us elevating ourselves, especially as Black people, especially as people as minorities, and we're in these sets, the purpose of us showing up, the purpose of us making these achievements is for the generations of people behind us. They don't have to go through this. The reasons our ancestors went through what they went through, they shouldn't have went through. The purpose of them doing all those different things was for us to be able to have an easier access of elevation, of growth, of prosperity. So why in turn do when we get in these spaces that we want to do the same? Why? Because it goes back to accepting that Eurocentric view. What capitalism and imperialism and colonialism promotes is that somebody has to be the dominant one. And a lot of people have taken that mindset and have felt that as long as they get good in their position, where they are, how they are, that's good enough. Because that individualism tells them that if that person gets up there with them, they're going to take it. They're going to mess it up. They're going to, what's the words they use now? Oversaturate the market so it be, or knock down the value, which are not true, but only so they can be stingy and keep all the access to themselves. But they market that so that way we fight amongst ourselves. We have to break through that. We have to see through that. And the way we can see through that is by understanding the intellect that we have, is by first accepting people where they are, where they come from, how they see the world. Be more relatable in that way. I think it was Malcolm X that said, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but how not to judge others when it comes to sharing information or informing people or engaging with different people, because at one point you didn't know it either. That's my issue I take when it comes to anti-intellectualism, is that the people who are in these intellectual spaces, once we get to a level, we forget. Whether we mentally forget, we emotionally forget, or we physically forget where we come from. And on one end, being intellectual myself, or and who has elevated in academic spaces, I've got my bachelor's, I got my master's. I do get how that can happen, because the more you expand your mind, you receive more information, you start to think differently and engage differently and grow differently and move differently based off the information that you have. And so that does kind of create an outsider kind of feel when you go back to places you have been. But however, the key is not to treat people like they're less than when you do engage with them. Going back to my mom's summer schools, you know, it made me really see the connection of that. Because let me tell y'all, I may be showing my age a little bit, because I don't know if they still do this now or not. I would give my mom my report card. On it, it would tell you what grade you were being promoted to. It'll say like, "Oh, congratulations, you've been promoted from second grade to third grade." She'd be like, "Oh, okay, great, good." That Saturday morning, we in the car, we head to Books a Million. Now, for people who don't know what Books a Million was then, is what Barnes and Noble is now. And of course, they have the books in different categories and different stuff. And we would go straight to the workbook section. And whatever grade I was going to, so for instance, in this report card, I'm going to third grade, she would grab every subject for third grade. I'm talking about math, science, grammar, language arts, uh, stencil workbooks, anything along that lines. And come that Monday, the very first day of summer, that Monday, she would assign me different pages in each of the workbooks, and I would have to do it. And I did that for grades, I think, first grade all the way to maybe my ninth, 10th grade year of high school. And I can be the first one to tell you, as a kid, I was just like, this is not how you're supposed to spend your summer. This is not, oh my gosh, like, why? Like, why am I doing this? But now, as an adult, I value that so much, because in her doing that, it enriched my intellect, my skills, my understanding, my grasp of how to problem solve. So I'm pretty sure she was in survival mode too. She was learning how to navigate this world and go through these different things. But when it came to me, she broke away from that and was like, no, I'm developing this. Yes, you got the grades, but I'm developing this. And in doing that, she also recruited the family to uphold me to that because, I still would, go to my grandma's house or my auntie house or somebody's house. And you best believe I still had to do that summer work when I was at that house. And, I didn't hate that either. But I remember specific. I remember my grandma, especially at my grandma's house. You know, I would try to sneak and watch TV and act like like it didn't matter and stuff. And my grandma would quick, hey, did you finish your lesson? Did you do your lesson? And I did be like, oh, okay. All right, before you go in there watch that TV, you better finish your lesson. Do your lesson now. R.I.P. grandma. But blesses her, I say. But thinking back on that, how she was able to cultivate so many people, including herself, but so many people around me to be so invested in that. And then as I grew and received information through education and different levels of academia, I saw how those skills expanded and allowed my intellect to change and grow and develop even more. And to also understand how to, in response to that, how to include personal experiences, how people carried themselves, how people interacted with one another, and then just my personal natural curiosity of that really do matter and really do engage and connect to one another. So that leads me to the concept of when it comes to battling against anti-intellectualism, another responsibility we have and taking accountability for is reimagining the concept of the village. What does that village look like? Because a lot of people say the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. But I want to expand on that. It takes a village to raise people, to uplift people. And the village isn't necessarily people either. It's also, a village can also be resources. A village can also be institutions and organizations that help develop and create safeguards for healthy development. Sometimes the village may not look like a nuclear family. It can be chosen family. It can be of your friends, communities that you daily interact with, all surrounding you and being near you, encouraging you, making way for you, creating space for you. We also have like mentorships. We also have different like camps and development centers and all those things, which ironically in this time, because of the control we're seeing being snatched away, being underdeveloped, being underfunded. Because for me, ultimately, I feel the biggest issue is we have normalized too many wrongs and just kind of wrote them off as that's just what's happening. That's just this larger system at play, not realizing the little things that we can do with each other right now can make big change. Echoing the words of Octavia Butler, everybody thinks that it's going to take this big, grand, monumental event to break this revolution wide open and just change the world, when really it's small acts of people tackling specific issues and all simultaneously in their own individual way, using their own skills, using their own intellect, and connecting with other people to make it change. That is what's going to turn this stuff around. But if we continue to adapt and ingrain ourselves in this Eurocentric view of only one way to do it, or only one way to view it, or only one leader, only one voice, only one, we are literally just allowing this issue to fester. We have to start somewhere, and the best place to start is within ourselves. We have to be willing to see and take accountability for what's going on. So take your power back. Reclaim, invest in your intellectualism. Question everything, but don't question so much that you get to a hole and start sounding just like the oppressor that you're trying to break away from. Because that's also, I'm not going to deny, we're seeing as well. Because there's so many people loving the sound of their own voice, or people who sound like them, and not questioning why certain messages are being pushed and who is sending that message and who and where they got that information from, but then wonder why nothing's really getting solved. What's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong. And we have to start telling people that. Now, let's not use the conversation on anti-intellectualism to degrade anybody. But at the same time, we also need to raise our intellect so we could tell people, no, you sound a little dumb because you're wrong. Not because you're intellect. You're just wrong. Believing lies. Because people are promoting literal lies. Literal destructive information that causes such hate and division. And that's how they're able to get these laws passed. That's how they're able to take control like they do. But I will say the silver lining in all this, as long as you are still on this earth, you have time to change, to grow, to learn. Like there's a saying they say, an old dog can't learn new tricks. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. The old dog just accepted that it's old. But that doesn't mean it can't grow. It doesn't mean that it can't learn. It doesn't mean that it can't still flourish in its own way. It just has to change the way it goes about it. And I think that's the larger message. And even if you feel that those circumstances can't change or you can't deal with them, there are things within yourself that you can control. You just have to identify what that is. Because at the end of the day, all of us have our own lanes. All of us have what we are going through. All of us have our different methods of doing that. My purpose of this is just to bring that awareness to you so you can start questioning and answering those questions for yourself and find what your role is.
It's been 5 years, I still love everything about you. Put all our trust in us, there's no more fear. Although I haven't really been the perfect partner, your mind, your heart, and honesty is how I breathe. And when I follow you, it feels like home. And in these ways, I'm humble. Can we pack our bags and run away to the mountain high, just you and me? Hit me like a storm on a summer's day. Never had a love that made me feel this way. Whenever you're away and I can't seem to reach you, I think of your smile and it's like you're here. You taught me how to love myself and I feel this. Your heart and my heart will beat the same rhythm. And when I follow you, it feels like home. And in these ways, I'm humbled. Can we pack our bags and run away to the mountain high, just you and me? Hit me like a storm on a summer's day. Hit me like a storm. Never had a love that made me feel this way. Never had a love that made me feel this way. Hit me like a storm on a summer's day. And it feels like yesterday. Never had a love that made me feel this way. Can you I mean it. Can you feel it the way I see it? You know I mean it. Can you feel it the way I see it? You know I mean it. Can you feel it the way I see it, the way I mean it? You know I'm feeling what I'm seeing. Hit me like a storm on a summer's day. Never had a love that made me feel this way, just like yesterday.
And that was Full Crate featuring Gaidaa with A Storm on a Summer's Day. And I love that song because it gives me that energy of like the warm summer nights, like the summer rain or the summer little romance or summer loving. Shout out to my thespians on that one. But if you get that reference. But yeah, I really love how they just blend that energy together and create just how they ride on that beat. Ugh, it's just gorgeous. So I'm gonna leave you with that. So of course, if you want to connect with me, as always, I am on all social medias. Facebook.com is Queen Lady AC. On Instagram and Threads, it is _ I am Lady AC. On Twitter, because yes, I call it Twitter, is capital I am Lady AC. And I am on Substack as Lady AC. So yes, y'all continue to expand on that intellect, to grow on your understanding, enrich your understanding, enrich your intelligence, read them banned books, use these libraries, connect with one another, and let's make this change happen, y'all. And use that imagination and enjoy yourself this summer. Please enjoy yourself when you can, because joy is also a very important part of your intellect too. So I'll leave you with that. I ain't gonna preach no more. I'll leave you with that. So until next week, y'all, I'll see you then. Bye.